worship talking about this idea of the remnant, that which is simply cast aside. In that call to worship, based on our reading from Jeremiah today, that's how the people felt in Jeremiah's day. The people in the northern kingdom, which had retained the name Israel, they were overthrown by Assyria 100 years before the southern kingdom of Judah had been overthrown by Babylon, and they had all been taken into exile. And so now Jeremiah comes, largely bringing this prophecy to the southern kingdom, but not leaving the northern kingdom out of all of this, but letting all of them know that God is still there, still a part of them. And you wonder what's been happening with them over the past 100 years in the north, and for the past 40 or so years in the south. They've been trying to maintain this semblance of who God is for them, trying to hold on to whatever it is that they could hold on to. They might have had simply remnants of their own faith that they were still clasping to by sharing the stories as they went on, talking about the story of the Exodus, talking about the great kings that they had experienced of Saul and David and Solomon, probably remembering the days of Josiah even, and sharing those stories with their children and their children's children. But even as the prophets came, often bringing words of such rebuke, they probably felt they had very little to hang on to, and that's exactly what Jeremiah tells them. You do have just a little to hang on to, but that little, that's enough for God. That's enough for God to work with. Even if you just have a few remnants at your disposal, God can do something with them. And so God comes to Jeremiah and says, bring them this promise. Let them know that out of this remnant, I will bring you back to the land that was promised. I'll bring you back to where you should be. Knowing that it's going to take some patience, it's going to take some perseverance to get through all of that. And most importantly, it's going to take some faith. Faith that God actually can do something grand with so little. Earlier in my ministry, I served a congregation, and after being there a year or so, I got the story of some of the people in that congregation who would do anything for the congregation, who would be there no matter what was happening. And I actually wondered why their commitment was so strong. And I learned that that congregation had gone through a series of real challenges 10 or 15 years earlier, to the point where a lot of people had just walked away and left. But not these people who were there. They had hung on. They had carried the congregation through really difficult times. They felt like they were the remnant. And the future of that congregation was held in their hands, and they took it so seriously, and their commitment to that was so strong. And that's who they became. They became that remnant that said if they would simply be together in faith, that God could do amazing things still through them. But you know, it's not always that easy. And sometimes, of course, we can look at that on a very corporate scale. And we could look out at this group today and we could say, here at Bethany Lutheran Church, we're doing pretty well. We're doing okay. In fact, we're moving forward with the way that God has planned for us. So this lesson doesn't really apply to us much. And maybe if you looked at the outside, at the congregation as a whole, that's what it would seem like. But you never know what's going on in the heart and soul of any person who walks in to worship on any given day. You may have people who walk in and they think that their faith is just hanging on by a thread. And this morning, of course, we're going to celebrate with our confirmands what they experienced yesterday, that profession of their faith, the way that they understand that strong in their life. And that is such a beauty for us to see. But no, there can come a time when even your faith doesn't feel as strong as it might today. And you can feel like God isn't taking care of you because you're trying to do it all by yourself. And that's the time to go and pull out a picture of today and realize, like you will in a few minutes, standing all here in front of us, that you were never asked to be in this life of faith alone, but you were asked to be in this life of faith together with those who are around you and part of the whole congregation, which is why we have you in their midst today. Because that's a part of our call, is to understand that this faith that we share, this life that we share that brings us together, that whenever we're feeling particularly strong, that's when we're sometimes needed the most, because we never have an idea who might be feeling weak and just need to know that they're in the company of more saints who can support them. That's what happens in a place like this. And then we hear those words from the psalm that Pastor Arnie read for us this morning that talk about how the people may have gone out with weeping, but they are collected together in joy. And so we are to be that collective group, to understand what it is that God is calling us forward into, to realize that miraculous things can happen, even when it feels like our faith may just be hanging on by a thread. I wonder if that's what it felt like for Bartimaeus, the blind man, in our gospel reading. I wonder if the people around him had been talking to him over the years and saying to him, Bartimaeus, it's time to give it up. You just have to realize this is your station in life. I mean, we even heard that a little bit from the Jeremiah passage, where it said that God is going to call forth from these people the blind and the lame. And maybe that's what Bartimaeus was hanging on to, that God's call was still there even for him, because the blind and the lame, you know what they felt like? They felt like the remnants. They felt like those who had no use whatsoever to contribute. And yet when Jesus walked by, you wonder how many of the people had told Bartimaeus, just be quiet. Jesus has no use for you. And then Jesus said, tell him to come to me. And then all the people around me, hey, Bartimaeus, take heart. You know, I'm with you. I've got you. I'm in faith with you on this one. And then they come forward to Jesus. And Jesus realizes and looks at him and says, I don't know where your faith life has been throughout this journey of blindness of yours, Bartimaeus, but I know it's there now. And your faith has made you well. And so he can see. That's a part of our life of faith, is knowing that God sometimes will reopen our eyes to what's happening around us in our own lives and maybe for the life of the church. Today, confirmands, you'll stand up here and invite us into the faith that you share. Know that as you go forth, the strength that you share with us today is the strength we all live on. And there might be somebody here today who just feels a little weak, almost discarded. In what you share today, you will let them know that God collects people just like that. People that are a part of this great fabric of the community of God. And as I look down here again, I think that's what I'm going to see. I'm going to see this collection of things gathered together, that which was seemingly cast aside, now being gathered for a purpose. And so as you bless us with your work today, as you bless us with your faith today, know this, that whatever you have in you, God will always work with that. For this cry can always go up. Save, O God, your people, though I might feel like but a remnant when I am collected together in faith with those around me. I trust that God will do something amazing. Amen.